Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, power, and glory forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you. All right, citizens' comments. Have any?
Just going to close the door real quick. In and out of that. No, they're
Alright, so we'll move on to the only item today, discussion on recommended 2025 operating capital plans.
Okay, everybody. First, I want to say thank you for your time the last couple of weeks, or last week. I thought it was very good discussions that we had individually. Hopefully, it was enlightening for you on where we get these budget numbers when we put them together. But really today is just to go over those numbers one more time before we put it to a vote next week. Make sure there aren't any outstanding questions. So today's is really just a summary of what we went through in detail last week. There is a spreadsheet that I've been working on that Mayor, Mr. Ford, and Mr. Scoggin did not see, that I started after y'all's meeting. It's just a summary of the income statement. In other words, it gives us what we have coming in, what we are expending, and a total, and what's left at the end of every month and at the end of year to date. You'll see that at the end, but I want to make sure y'all see it so you know. I'm trying to give y'all really high level numbers so that you see how either well we're doing or if we're under in 1 month, which we were, but there was a reason for that if you recall back in May. So you'll see that in there. We have updated it with our September numbers. That's what you'll see in the slide today. But outside of that, everything really is just as we talked about. We're going to talk about payroll adjustments real fast. I'm just going to show you the summary, not the entire spreadsheet, just like we talked about in the individual meetings. We'll look at the summary of the operation and maintenance, capital, and then I'm going to give some updates on future board presentation slides that I'm working on for January, starting in January of 25. And that includes the spreadsheet that I just mentioned. That'll be part of that. Going through real fast, if y'all recall, there were some questions about how we look today and with the adjustments that we're making today, what are those dollars? And as we stated in many meetings, total compensation is about a 6.9% increase. Remember, that does not include some of the budgeted employees that were supposed to be here, but were either not hired or let go throughout the year. Really what we want to focus on is what we're talking about is that 2025 team count and what we're budgeting for 25 versus what was budgeted for 24. We had about 4.19 million that was budgeted for salaries in 2024. We're proposing to go to 4.33 million for that adjustment. The big question was, what is Phelps's compensation for that? We have budget at 1.06 million that was budgeted. We're going to push that to 1.16 million. Bringing in a total compensation for 24 that was budgeted of 5.25 with a proposed of 5.5 million. Now, we've talked about this 25 and 26%. That is what percentage of this is this number? In other words, how much are we paying outside of salary? And that 25-26% is within what I would consider industry standard based on all the investigations I did and research I did on the those numbers look really good from the standpoint of where we're supposed to be. If you recall, we're trying to keep everything at about 5% or less based on our pension packages. We don't want to go above that 5% on total compensation because then we'll have to rerun the numbers with our pension folks. So we're sitting at 4.64. with a salary increase of about 3.34. Total, as you can see, contribution increase is 104,000. Salary increase is 139,000. So, any questions on salary based on our discussions today and last week? Okay, hearing none. Operations and maintenance budget. These numbers have not changed, I don't believe, since we looked at them last week. I've tried to leave everything the same. Our transmission operations and maintenance, we don't have a lot of transmission, we talked about that. So those numbers are going to be fairly low. The only thing we might do is some right-of-way maintenance, but even then, that's not required. We will probably go in 2026. I'll probably have a right-of-way proposal to clear the entire right-of-way. We'll deal with that in 26. Right now, our numbers, I want to try to keep them as close to similar increases as I can for this year. Distribution. If you recall, if you add up all the payrolls, just a reminder, it would not add up to that salary that I just showed you. And that's because we have aided construction that happens in a lot of our work orders. So I used our financial folks and I determined what percentages I needed to use to pull out for that aided construction. So we kept everything as close to that increase, allowing that increase, but taking out that percentage that would be for aided construction. One of the questions that came up, just for everybody's clarification, this number does include overtime. And the reason that is I know that is because this amended budget and projected does include the overtime that we have to pay for maintenance and operations during outages and other times. So this does include overtime. Small tools, flame retardant clothing, safety supplies. Flame retardant clothing, I'm going to emphasize we are looking at reducing our costs considerably. We are going to a new company and we will be doing that in February. I have not gotten what costs are going to be realized in that savings, but I do know that it's a significant savings, as much as half, if not lower. So as soon as I know those exact numbers, I'll present that to the board and we'll have that reduction. I do want to leave this number like it is right now, because until we see those savings, I don't want to adjust it. Our contract, we told them we were going to stop in February, so we should start seeing that savings either in February or March. Safety supplies. We also are going away from Titan. Titan is our safety folks that do all of our training and everything. So we're going to start seeing some savings there as well. Troy is going to start doing all of the training. We've gotten the equipment we needed to allow him to do that training. As soon as Titan's contract is up later this year, we're gonna be getting rid of them, and we'll also see the savings there. Biggest thing I want y'all to understand is as we go through all of this, and when we get a new CFO in here, we're going to continue to look for places to save money. We're going to have some areas that we're going to have to increase dollars. We just don't have a choice, especially materials. So we're looking for areas where we can save money and try to keep the budgets within a reasonable increase and not something, huge like a 10 or 15 or 20% increase. We don't want that. Substation maintenance. These are just placeholders for the first 4. As you can see, we haven't done much from a substation perspective this year, but you never know what you're going to come up with in the event something happens in a substation. So I want to keep those dollars in there. As you see, I've adjusted them to 10,000 instead of 15. I think we'll be fine at 10. Of course, anything catastrophic, God forbid, anything that happens that's high dollar, the board will know about. Again, going through auto truck expenses, I don't believe the amended dollar amount was correct. Yes, sir.
We talked about that, and you said that you were gonna get with Devin. You remember we talked about the depreciation, him setting it up on 7 years in it?
Right, and that's on the capital projects that we're gonna look
Later
at
on.
a little bit later on.
Yeah.
I'll get to that. I do have some discussion points for you on that, though.
Okay.
This is really just auto and truck expenses for the operation and maintenance.
Gas and oil and breakdowns.
You got it. Also, if y'all recall, just before we get to it, there were some calculation errors on the amended 2024 budget that we came across that the previous CEO inadvertently missed. So just keep in mind that even though we're looking at an amended budget, it was 8.03 or something like that million, 8.05 million. It should have been about 8.75 million, but we're fine. I believe we're fine based on the projections that we're looking at today. We're going to be under that 8.05 million. We're going to be fine. Payroll, we've already talked about. Tool depreciation and pollution control. Pollution control is like your trash, anything like that. We have a bin in the back that takes old creosote poles that we have to put in, and they take those and dispose of them correctly. It's items like that. Lighting maintenance, they're pretty straightforward. That's just street lights, security lights, things like that. Storeroom is the warehouse. Again, the numbers look pretty good. We're going to stick with the 560 on the proposed budget just to give a little bit increase for the depreciation of the facilities. Building maintenance, or warehouse building maintenance, we didn't really have any. A little bit later you'll see there was an increase this year for this building's maintenance with all the issues we've had from the air conditioner, fire system, all of that. It really escalated our costs. We'll go over that here in a minute. Meter reading, we're going to leave all of that the same. Outside of, I've increased the payroll just a little bit. If y'all recall, we have some failures that are going on with our collector devices, and we're going to be requesting to replace those next year. Records and collections, pretty straightforward. Depreciation of office equipment. We're projecting about 288, going to 300. Leasing, which is all the copiers and everything. We continue to look for ways to save, so I kept that around the same price as what we're projecting, which is $40,000. Maintenance, those two, maintenance and expenses, are pretty straightforward. They stay consistent throughout the years. Customer accounting payroll, this increase is really reflected on the payroll increases that we've already discussed. Customer assistance, those really, we don't have a ton of expenses in that area. As you can see, we don't have any projections other than the 908.05 promotional expenses. So we're going to leave those in there for next year. All others, and this is just miscellaneous items throughout the budget that can't be accounted for in any of the previous numbers. Auto truck expenses are straightforward. Office expenses, pay station. As you can see on all of that, we kept it about the same. Now again, on office building maintenance, this is where we have about $93,000 right now this year that we've had to use for budget. And we're projecting at 120. Hopefully it didn't get that high. That's just a straight line projection based on what we've spent to date. Now, if you recall, we've got AC, we've got the fire suppression system we've had problems with. We had problems with our emergency generator. We've had problems with our septic, bathrooms. The list goes on and on. I believe we have everything corrected now. And so we are going to normalize that to about 27,000 and see how it goes. If we get some extraordinary costs, I'll bring it up to the board next year and make sure y'all are fully aware. And if it goes beyond my authority, I will get your blessing on it. Yes, sir.
Maybe a dumb question.
Never done.
But didn't we pay cash for this bill?
Yes, sir.
Aren't we depreciating it out? Okay, and that depreciation is showing up as a positive to the bottom line. So that's $100 per year. That should offset that. It should offset a pretty good chunk of that $120,000 that we're.
This is strictly the
As a
cost.
credit.
This is strictly the cost. We take the depreciation in another line item. But it's also, the depreciation is also.
But I mean, it's cash that we shouldn't have spent, is what I'm saying.
Well, it's repair, it's out of warranty.
It's out of warranty repairs.
Like, so getting someone in to fix the septic system or check whatever.
I mean, it's cash we paid out, but what I'm,
Like that facilities depreciation, fourth line, that's straight line.
that is an expense that we wrote a check for. I realize that.
I mean, we don't write a check, it's just in our audit.
Yeah.
They depreciate our value of the facility.
Yep.
But it's not that's bad. Remember how, in the past, they said that includes depreciation, so then we were always, what is the bottom line? Net revenue, is it added depreciation, but it's not really a cash item. So then that's what he said on that last slide, he's gonna show that doesn't have all of that, this is bottom line cash, what we're making or losing per month.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, this is just straight costs out of pocket.
Pay out of pocket
I
costs.
mean, we have to
If
pay.
you didn't have the $120,000 in the bank, you couldn't have paid that bill.
Correct. Correct. Which, as you see, it wasn't budgeted. But we're within what our budget.
Well, we would have had to have a meeting and say, hey, we need to move this $120,000 from.
We had budgeted dollars that could offset that we weren't spending in other areas.
In another area.
So we were good. Any other questions on that?
Thank you.
Administrative payroll, these are pretty straightforward. These come out of the salary that we've already gone through. They're just straightforward numbers. Why she had 1.2 million in that line item, I don't know. I don't think it needs to be that much. Somewhere right around $1 million. As you can see, we're projecting out about 809,000 for 2024, and then of course.
$300,000 left.
Yep. Professional services, that's all of our engineering. That's legal, that's all of those line items. I believe that we had an earlier projection of over 400,000. I don't think that's right. I think 340 is plenty. The biggest jump was in the audit dollars, and the audit dollars I don't think are going to be that much. So that's why I brought it back down some. And I didn't agree with her expenses because if y'all recall, she didn't add the line items up correctly. That should have been almost 500,000 if you look at her numbers back when she did that. But even that was overshot. I don't think that was right. Rate study, financial planning, pretty straightforward. Transmission access, COBRA administration, those are all straightforward. I don't expect to have any COBRA administration this year. Hopefully not. This coming year. Insurance, we talked about it. We've got a 12% increase in insurance. So we have to accommodate that. $246,400. If you recall, some of the things that are going to help our costs in the future, we didn't have any heat-related injuries this summer. If we can continue to push that safety side of it with Troy, that'll continue to help drive our costs down for insurance, or at least not escalate like we're seeing here. Injuries and damages, a lot of this, where she shows this, that's some of the cases that we've been dealing with. We've got those paid out, so we're good. I'm only putting 10,000 in there because anything that comes up of significance, we will be bringing that to the board, of course, to get permission to move forward. I didn't think we needed to put any significant amount in there at this point. All right, going into employee benefits, human resource payroll. That's straight out of our salaries spreadsheet. Bonuses is that line item that the board has requested to see. It's just a placeholder. That doesn't mean it's going to be given out. It's just going to be based on, those bonuses are going to be based on merit and how well each team member is doing here at the utility. Health insurance reimbursement is part of our benefits that we have to give out every year. If somebody asks for it, it's reviewed by HR. It's not just handed out. It's got to be a legit expense. It's on top of the HSA dollars that we put into the account. So those are just part of what we do. Again, uniforms we've talked about. This is another part where we split the cost between a couple of different areas. Other tuition bills, education tuition. We don't have that many going into higher learning. If we end up with some and we need to go to the board for some additional dollars, because it is in our employee handbook, we'll go ahead and get approval before moving forward. Biggest thing I want to emphasize is education and training. I want to make sure our folks are always trained. I want to make sure they're going to school to get better. I want to make sure they're trained internally to get better. So historically, my understanding is executives were the only ones that were given the opportunity. We've changed that. We're sending people to school today. Our IT technician went to Georgia just a couple of weeks ago to learn about our Meridian UPN system, so he can better serve everybody here within the company. So we'll continue to push those training and education programs.
One question I have.
Yes.
So, just so we're on the same page too about moving the monies around in budget. Say, education tuition, you got 3,000 and all of a sudden 10 people want to go do something to advance a skill and get certifications, and it's 50,000, just picking a number. If you don't have it within this section, that 50,000, but legal fees are down for the year, so you want to move it here, that's the budget limit you're coming to us for?
I would come to y'all and say I want to move it. If it was 50,000 or less and it's in my authority, I would move it, but I would make y'all aware. I'm not gonna make a habit of moving things around without y'all's knowledge. I want to make sure y'all are aware of all moves. You'll probably hear about $20,000 moves, well within what I'm allowed to do, but I want to, transparency to me is huge, especially with what y'all been through here. So I want to make sure y'all are fully aware of any moves that I do within my authority. If it's outside my authority, obviously I have to get board approval. Any other questions?
My deal with that, we'd like to be a part of it because we'd like for the team to know that we're behind them and we'd like something for that to happen for them.
Yep. And I completely agree with that. I think the board needs to be involved in those decisions to show that y'all are behind them on it, 100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Anything else? Okay. Franchise fees, they're pretty straightforward. Nothing we can do about those. We have to pay those every year. Community support. On donations, just keep in mind we did include that $2,000 scholarship increase that we did. We were at 1,000, now we're at 2,000 on scholarships. So those dollars are reflected here in this projection. Utilities, again, straightforward. Water, sewer, AT&T, Spectrum. We're trying to find ways to save money on Spectrum. Y'all heard us talk about that. We've got backup internet here now. That was part of an agreement we did with Guadalupe Valley. But we still have a way to save some money for Spectrum. So when we get that money savings, I'll make sure y'all are aware of it. I can't do that because that realization of that savings isn't there yet. Spectrum keeps kind of him-hawing around a little bit on that, and we're fighting for it. The last items, uncollectible accounts, meter deposits, bond trustee fees, those were pretty much straightforward. I didn't make much change on those outside of what was projected and what's historically been done. Any questions on O&M? Again, just to give the summary, 2023 we were at 7.5 mil. 2024 original budget was 7.6. Our amended that the board approved was 8.05. If you recall, just a refresher, that should have been 8.75 if you had added the numbers correctly. I think that was way overboard based on what I've researched and all the investigations I've done. Notice we're at about 7.67 for the year. Remember, we're missing some of our budgeted salary positions, so that number is a little skewed. We're asking for 8.4 mil. I would say this number should have been somewhere probably in this range if we had everybody here for the full year. So we're moving along about what I would expect from an increase standpoint. And again, that proposed budget dollar of 8.4 mil, keep in mind that includes the salary increases that we are asking for.
And the increased number of people.
Yes, sir. Correct. The org chart that you approved last board meeting is reflected in that. Yes, sir.
That's about a 5% increase.
Agreed. Any questions on O&M? All right. We'll fly through the capitals. Land buildings for transmission, we're leaving all that the same. Those are really just placeholders in the event something happens. The new substation, what I'm calling Bentwood right now, I don't know if that'll be the final name, but we're going to use that for now. For land and getting the land ready, getting the pad built, putting in conduits, grounding, about 1.66 mil is required. And then to do the structures and improvements, which is basically the above grade, we need about 1.35 mil. So about 3 million left to spend above and beyond what we've already spent for the Floresville project. The other thing we're trying to do this year is increase our security at all 4 stations, all 4 existing, by bringing in a smart camera system. The only thing we have right now is really just a chain link fence and a lock on the gate. We need to do a better job of securing our substations to keep the honest people honest and make sure that if somebody comes in with bad intentions, we're able to get them. So these cameras are smart cameras. They've got AI built into them. They move around and watch. They actually can tell you if it's a person, if it's an animal. There are various things that it can do, but yeah, we really need to ramp up our security in our station, especially in today's environment. Pole replacements we've talked about $1.8 million to do pole replacements. Normally we're in the 700 to 900,000 range on an annual basis. If you recall, we've got about 2,000 poles that we have to replace. Some of those poles we're buying this year under this year's budget. We do have some remaining pole budget that we are able to use. So, but to finish out everything we need to do, we need about $1.8 million just to get us caught up on danger poles, damaged poles, poles that need to be replaced because they are not within the strength requirements that we have. Next line is material labor and labor for normal growth. So that's just your normal poles. Some of that goes to aid to construction. Some of that, if a storm comes through, we may have to replace a pole. So we're just going along normal increase lines, going to 1.208 million. The next 5 are jobs that we want to do to improve the system. Conductor upgrades is the main drive behind that. It improves reliability, improves voltage, and allows us to serve the loads that are coming. Overhead conductor and devices. This is really just a normal load growth scenario of 1.24 mil. Underground conduit and conductor and devices are the same thing. That's just our normal growth. We're going to keep those the same and add a percentage to it. Line transformers. We've got, so for the mayor, Mr. Porter, Mr. Scoggin, this number was wrong previously. We've corrected that since. That number is actually an escalation of these numbers plus these 3. And Chairman knows I had Rogelio double check that number to make sure it was right this time. There's a calculation that's built into that. So just letting you know where that came from. I know you and I spoke about it in detail. We have normal hydraulic and electronic reclosers, regulators, and then I want to bring in some capacitor controls. Capacitor controls allow me to improve our losses on the system by controlling the bars on a bar level and not just at what we call time temp. Right now, we either just throw in a capacitor bank and leave it on, or we do it based on temperature. So the hotter the temperature, it may kick in. Well, I don't want to do that. I want to go on bars because we can save money by keeping our bars as close to 0 as we can. And at some point, if you want an indication on that from an engineering standpoint, I'd be happy to show you. But you know, today is probably not that not that spot to do that in. But I think I can do about 8, somewhere between 5 and 8 capacitor controllers for that dollar amount. And we're going to get those installed pretty quickly here in January if we can get them in.
They're either 5,000 a piece or they're 8,000 a piece.
Yes, sir. They're in that range.
And what do you think the return will be on them?
The return is going to be helping our 11 to 15% loss that we have on the system. It's part of a plan I'm trying to put together to reduce that and get it to around 6 or 7%, which is more industry standard. There's some areas like lighting. We need to make sure all of our security lights and our street lights are being paid for by whoever had them put in. We need to make sure all of our transformers that aren't being used are disconnected because they're just energized transformers. They're using electricity but not serving a load. There's several things that we're going to start implementing here in 25 to try to help drive that loss factor down. And it literally is what it means. It's losses. We're buying kilowatt hours but not selling.
Okay.
And we need to be very aware of those situations. I've asked all our linemen as they're driving through, if they see a transformer that's disconnected, don't let it sit there. Because every time a transformer has what's called no load losses and load losses. So if it doesn't have any load on it, it still has a watt hour.
Why wouldn't we pull that transformer off the pole and bring it in to be sold again?
I cannot answer that. Normally, that's what I would expect to happen. I can't tell you from a history why it didn't happen. I can tell you that future, we're gonna make it happen. So that's absolutely correct. You disconnect the service, as long as it's not gonna be put back into service. You know, if there's some reason it might be put back into service, you might leave it up there, but you should pull the fuse on it. But if it's being used for something completely different and it's never gonna be used again, we need to take it down. Services and meters, those are pretty straightforward. One of the things to emphasize is on our meters. This is the right line item. When I got here, there were no meters in the system in our warehouse. We were scraping by trying to find meters. And what I've done since, and I know I've told everybody, but just to reemphasize, I've asked our warehouse to put at least 2 pallets of meters, and when I say meters, I'm talking a residential 2S 200 amp meter. I've asked them to put 2 pallets of that up in our warehouse at all times. When you order another one, you put it up on the shelf, take the oldest one that's up on the shelf, you pull it down and use it first. Always have 2, minimum 2, probably 3, depending on how much growth we have over the next couple of years. But to play catch up, I had to buy 2 extra pallets that weren't expected for this year. But it had to be done, or else we would still be in the same boat where we're scraping by for residential meters. We're not at that point anymore. We're in a good shape. We have plenty of meters on hand, and we will be able to serve much of the growth that we already have that we're seeing. So just keep that in mind if you see some numbers that are skewed. Street lighting, again, this is just buying street lights, aid to construction, we'll pay for most of that, and this is just to get street lights bought and put in stock. Now on to communications. We have a switch and a network. If y'all remember, there's an IT/OT device that we need that's going to separate our SCADA from our internal IT network. We have a firewall that separates the two, but what we're trying to do is bring in a device that will actually physically separate them, not just electronically separate them. You can electronically separate, but if you know how to break through that firewall, you can get in. Let's go ahead and add that other device and give us another layer of security so that we don't have any culprits trying to get in on our system and trying to operate all of our devices that our SCADA can do. AMI, if you recall, I mentioned earlier, we have failures on all of our collectors, all of our meter collectors. We need to upgrade those. Remember when I first started, we were looking at about a $500,000 project that we were trying to get a grant for. We didn't get that grant, but that grant was going to cause us to have to invest 20% or $100,000. If we got the grant, that's what our part of that investment was. We didn't get the grant. It was kind of a blessing. There's a new technology that we can use that will allow us to do this for right at $100,000, ironically. And we'll be able to start implementing that pretty soon. The devices are more of a meter-based type, whereas today they're a box that's probably 18 by 12. And they go out on the system at various locations and collect meter data that surrounds that box. We're going to replace those with these meter socket type collectors. And that's what the Tantalus server, AMI, actually these 2 line items right here, the 75 and this 24, that's what those are for. That's about $100,000 worth, and that gets us our upgrade on our Tantalus system to be able to read those collectors, and we can go from there. This 108.02 is a depreciation number. As I stated with most of y'all, I'm not sure why that was added in there. because later on it's physically taken out. It's like it's not even there. So as soon as I have a better answer for you on that, I'll let you know, but it has no bearing on the final number, I can tell you that. Transportation equipment, we're gonna have to replace the two-way radios on our system. And we are working to go with a different company, Tape, and that is going to, that plus these last two numbers here, this 150 and this 18, plus the 125, about $250,000.
But did you check to find out that it was buying?
I have not. I don't know if it's buying or leasing, and I have not received an answer on that yet. I knew that answer, that question was coming, but I don't have an answer yet.
Okay.
I'll make sure we have it for a board meeting next week. So on the truck changeouts, Devin's plan for truck changeouts is an 8-year rotation. A lot of these vehicles that you're seeing here are 2011, 2012, 2014, 2013 aged vehicles. They're within 10 plus years, mileage is high, hours are high. He does not want to go to a mileage and a hourly, because once you do that, he just has some issues with going to that type of setup. He wants to do an 8-year rotation, and one of the reasons he wants to do it that way is so that it has some value at the end of that 8-year life cycle, that we can actually recover some of those dollars and invest in a new vehicle. So those are drives behind why he's just doing an 8-year cycle. And if you need a better answer than that, I will have him tell you at the board meeting next week when he's here. I'll have him describe it a little better to you. We're looking for a couple of different devices. One is a reel trailer. We have 1,000 MCM underground conductor now, and we need a reel trailer that's able to handle that. The other thing we'd like to do is a new skid steer that has a mulcher on the front. I was talking with our right-of-way supervisor, our new right-of-way supervisor, Jeff, and he stated that something that took them 2 days, he could do in about 4 hours if he had that mulcher. And if we can get the board approval on getting this mulcher, he has big plans on increasing the amount of right-of-way that we clear on an annual basis. A lot of what we do currently is by hand, and that's why it takes so long to do it. Darktrace is our cybersecurity software upgrade that we're requesting. As you know, there's culprits out there. Cybersecurity is high on everybody's list. We've got to maintain a very tight cybersecurity system here, especially with credit cards and other personal information that's stored at this facility. We've got to continue to upgrade our cybersecurity to ensure we protect that information that the public has entrusted us with. Dell monitors is just a placeholder. As we get failed units, we want to be able to replace them. Our Dell server cluster, if you recall, we were scraping by for storage space. We found some on some older systems. This will allow us to upgrade. The Dell tower is for our video surveillance. It'll be our DVR. It'll store all the information from the substations. And Genentech and Trimble, as I stated earlier, we should be able to get those bought this year. I'm not worried about those. We have some dollars that are remaining that we can utilize there. Overall, we're looking at about $14 million. If you see, back in 21, we had about $15 million, so it's not outside of what we've seen historically. I believe in 21 might have been Eagle Creek. It could have been a lot of the winter storm that got it. Following through though, we have a proposed capital of 14.06. I'm estimating about $2 million in annual construction. Remember the 100,000 depreciation we saw earlier that's taken right back out? Funds required for our capital is 11.96 million. If you use the 50-50 rule, bond to cash, we need about $6 million for each. And we currently have nearly 8 million available in bonds that we can pull from. Any questions on capital?
My only question is if we go to that 8-year rotation on buying the vehicles, how much is that gonna jump up the requirement on the bonds to 6.2 or 3 million?
No, leaving it like it is today.
Well, we've got to, if we're gonna go to an 8-year rotation, we've got to say we're gonna spend X number of dollars per year on automobiles. So we got to figure in a fixed amount per year, which means we're gonna have to figure in a fixed amount on bonds and capital that's gonna go towards that, correct?
Yes. And also, to your point, I'm looking at, and part of what I'm going to do for a future board presentation is the money we have left over this year. It's looking like probably about 5 to 7 million, depending on how the year ends. Taking some of that, and we could pay off maybe our 2014. Yeah, our 2014 bond. It's almost done. We can. I'm going to come up with some proposals, recommendations for us to discuss and see how we want to utilize those dollars. Some of the things we can do is possibly pay off a bond, maybe 2 of them that we have, and allow us to maybe procure another bond if we need to. And we're also going to look at possibly the pension. I think you had talked about what if we threw $1 million into pension and it provided a 20-year payout that we're currently at. There's multiple things we can do with that money. And I think one of the things I want to seriously look at is potentially paying off some of the bonds. But I don't know the ramifications on that from the standpoint of is it good to pay it off, or do we just keep paying it, showing that our credit continues to get better and better? So when the CFO gets here, that's some of the things we're going to be looking at. Any other questions on capital?
Thank you.
Okay. Future board presentations. I've shown most of the group this. Mr. Poor, Mayor, and Mr. Scoggin, y'all haven't seen this. This is what I was describing early in the presentation. I want to start doing this in January, where it shows our income versus our expenditures. Sorry, I can't talk. And then what's remaining each month. If you recall, I said we had a rough month in May, but there were some reasons behind that because we were playing catch up on a few things. If y'all recall, we knew about it, we presented it. But the rest of the year so far has been really good, as you can see. But this spreadsheet will also show at the end, for some reason it got clipped off, but at the end it'll show a year-to-date total and how much we have year-to-date. And we're in that 6-7 million right now.
Yeah, we've had some hot
We have
fall months. It should have been mild where it wouldn't have been near that good had it been cool like it's supposed to be.
One of the interesting things is if you look last year, July just outpaced this year's July very, very high. We were at 5.9 million income last year, whereas this year we didn't even hit 5.
Yeah.
So year to year, as we talked about in the individual presentations, year to year is weather dependent. It truly is. low growth is one thing. Low growth tells you that when you get those peak weather conditions, your dollars are going to continue to escalate. Your usage, the amount of power you're needing to supply it to everyone is going to increase. But weather has such a strong factor in how all of this plays, especially when you're trying to forecast out how much you're going to actually have income. As I told y'all, we're about a 47 to 50 million, $51 million corporation. So we have a good income and it's constant. But if we have a mild year, it could undercut it. That's why it's important we get some of these larger industrial loads, because those are constant loads. They're constantly on. They're not really weather dependent, and we could use some of those. So we're working hard to try to bring them in. Any questions on that? We're working on some metrics for responding to customer connections. I think I've had historically some information from our line design department that's been presented. Devin and I didn't like that. We're revamping that entire presentation, and y'all will start seeing that in January. But basically, we want to look at the time it takes to go from customer service to line design. Where do we need to improve? Line design timing. How long does it take line design to get a design done? How long does it take for us to get that customer paid in aided construction? You know, the one thing we can't control is that aided construction payment. So in our development of timeframes, that's just going to be an oddity. But what we can control is what we do internally. Line design to construction. Once we get that payment, how long does it take us to get it to construction? And how long does it take for construction to build it? You know, right now we say 4 to 6 weeks. I'm not sure I agree that that's the right number. But right now that's what it is. So we're looking, where can we improve? Where are our efficiencies? Where do we need to improve our efficiencies? Do we need to come to the board and ask for more personnel? There's multiple things that fall out of this. Business plans for expanding staff as required. Those business plans kind of fall out of metrics such as this. Those metrics are very important. And then last, what I just talked about, options recommendations for any unused funds at the end of the year. How do we want to utilize those? Last year, what did we take? We took it's either $1 million or $2 million, and we put it into URI to try to expedite that. We're going to start looking at our cash on hand. It's 200-day requirement. We're going to start looking at that and see when we get URI paid off, do we want to keep that going and start dumping that? Do we want to do something else with those dollars that are built into the G&T rate? That's my presentation for today. It pretty much sums up what we talked about. I got it done within an hour, as I promised. But I wasn't sure what questions I was going to have. So, any questions from the board members?
Thank you for the presentation. It was a good presentation, and also thank you for taking us individually, because I really, learned some things that I didn't. I mean, I was familiar with a lot, but when you broke it down like that, it was, it's a lot.
Well, Mr. Wetz, 2 or 3 meetings ago, made the recommendation of the individual meetings, and I thought it was a really good idea for this year. I think this year will probably be the only year you'll see that. When we bring in the floating board member next year, maybe I sit down with that individual board member, but I don't see this as an annual thing unless you just need it. If you want, I'm happy to do it for you annually. But if you understand what's going on in the budgets, if I'm explaining my job like I'm supposed to, hopefully we can just do it in this setting, do it for a couple hours, and we don't have to meet individually if we don't need to. Again, it's always open. I'm always always happy to sit down with any one of y'all. If y'all have questions or want to know how something's working or not working, let me know. I'm happy to do it. Chairman, that's my presentation for the day. My anticipation is to get this approved fairly quickly next week, unless everybody has questions. You know, it gives you another week to think about it.
Anything else?
Yes, sir.
The drones.
Yes, sir.
Who utilizes the drones?
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
How many of those do we have, do we use?
We have two. I think we have one spare, but we have two that are flying almost daily.
Yeah.
Depends on where they're trying, what they're trying to do that day. There are times when I've asked them to use the infrared portion of the drone capability and look at different substations or look down the line to see if we have a bad connection. One day down in Fall City, we had a feeder that kept blinking some of the customers, and I asked our drone team to not. I'd like them to go investigate it because Gilbert has a lot of line experience. I said, Gilbert, can you go look at this with your drone and see if you can find the culprit instead of our linemen spending 4, 5, 6 hours running up and down the line.
Yeah.
It made more sense. It was more efficient. We found a couple of cracked insulators, and I think we solved the mystery. But the drones have been really good. And,
Yeah, I was just wondering, I didn't see it mentioned in there anywhere.
yeah, we just bought a new one. Mr. Sachs approved a new one before he left. Showed up one day and I was like, oh. So, those are shown in this year's budget numbers, which we've already shown that we're within our budget. So, I don't see us needing another one, sir, anytime soon.
That kind of fascinates me, I'm just curious about it.
Let me know, and I'd be happy to get them to go show you a test run of it, and show you what they're about and how they do it.
I know at one meeting they had some pictures of
Yeah.
kind of some of the pictures they took and the infrared on it and how hard they putting that together. I was kind of reactive or
If you've got a couple of minutes, I might be able to, after the meeting, I can put them up on the TV if I think I know where they are on the network. I can show you some drone footage of the substations.
I think when I first came on, I went back there and saw the monitor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to see it,
One day, though.
if you want to see it live, Mr. Ford, or any other board members, if you want to see it live one day, let me know and I'll set something up. Obviously, I can't do it as a group from a meeting standpoint, but we can set up like individual 15, 20-minute interval show and tell.
Yeah.
I want to come back and fly.
Oh, yeah? You got to ask Gilbert and James, because I'm not saying yay or nay to that.
You don't want me flying.
Yeah.
Board, I can't thank y'all enough for everything, your support, and we look forward to another good year.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're at 2:04.